So we often will often hear teachings, say spiritual teachings, for lack of a better word, and imagine that what's being talked about is some other experience that we're not presently having. It's usually how it's heard. And then it's difficult to then not sort of some part of us to go looking for some other experience, to search for some other perception than the one that's happening right now. But actually, what I'm talking about is this perception that you're having right now. This experience that's here right now, not some other experience, because there is no other experience, actually. Not some other thought, not some other sensation, not some other emotion. This thought, this actual concrete present experience, the actuality of what's here, just as it is. So what I'd like you to invite you to do right now is to simply be with what's concretely here. Something is here. It's palpable, isn't it? Something is actually here, is present. You can't deny the presence of whatever it is that's showing up. Forget about whether it's sort of real in some ontological sense, who cares? But something's present. And just let yourself feel what's concretely here, the actuality of it. And then I invite you to ask this question, which is, whatever is showing up concretely right now in experience, what is that? What actually is this that's concretely here? The felt sense, we can feel the presence of everything, no matter what we might be calling it. But feel what's concretely here and be very, very precise with this question, with this exploration. What exactly is this that's concretely here? What is this? What is it? Nothing abstract about that at all. What is it? It's concretely here. What is it? And stay with the concreteness. Investigate that concreteness, that palpable presence of what's here. Let yourself be taken in by what's concretely here. Explore what's concretely, substantially, palpably present right now. We're not experiencing fear or joy or sadness or confusion or clarity, or we're experiencing experience. We're experiencing something concretely here that is not merely whatever labels we might be giving it, which in a sense tell us absolutely nothing about what's here. So just feel what's here. We don't have to go anywhere to find it because it's finding us. It's here. Something's here, just effortlessly here. You can investigate any aspect in the field of experience that seems to be showing up as something concretely, palpably here. anything. You take something relatively neutral, um, like what we would call breathing, and that's just a word to describe something that's concretely here, some experience that's here, some actuality that we then put the label of breathing on. So just forgetting the label for a moment. Whatever that label is apparently pointing to an experience, just feel what's concretely here that you might be calling breathing. What is it? What are the particles that make up breathing? This thing we're calling breathing. What's actually there? Feel that. You don't have to look for something, just feel whatever is here. Let it find you. You don't have to find it. Whatever shows up, that's what's concretely present. You don't have to look for something. What's actually there that you call breath? What is that feeling? What is what we call the feeling of breathing? We can say it's a feeling, a felt sense. What is that felt sense? What is actually there? It's very curious what ends up happening in this kind of investigation is that if something's definitely here, it's palpable, it's concrete, right? And then when you go to look for it, you can't find what it is. And yet here it is, concrete. So this is the curious paradox, is that we find the unfindability of this. We find the transcendental, empty, ungraspable nature of this, not by going to abstraction or thought, but by going to what's concretely here. Go to what's most concrete and you will find what is the least concrete. That's what really trippy. That's where you find it. Go to what's most concrete. Feel what's here. It's not an idea that something's here. That's a hypothesis. There's no hypothesis that something's here. There's the felt sense of it. It's like undeniable that the here is here, that the presence of whatever is here experientially. Then you feel that and you go to look for that and you try to find that, and you can't locate exactly what it is. You cannot get to the bottom of what it is. You cannot conclude what it is. You just keep finding more and more and more of some mysterious experiential phenomena that, again, you look for that, try to find that, you can't pin it down, you can't pin it down. So it's like nothing there that's graspable, that's definable, that's substantial, that's resolvable. And yet it shows up as all this apparent resolvable stuff that we call life, that we call experience. I mean, it's astonishing. That's the old Buddhist sutra, I think it's the Heart Sutra, that emptiness is form and form is emptiness. That the forms that are here, clearly, sight, sound, color, light, all the textures of life, the forms of life, they're here they are. No denying that. The dance of life. And yet when you go to look for what they are, you try to get to the bottom of what these forms are. You come up empty-handed. You cannot resolve what they are. They can't be determined. And yet that indeterminacy, that unresolvability, that empty nature, if you will, ungraspable nature, shows up as all this apparent graspable, resolvable, determinable phenomena that we call life. So that the forms are ultimately empty of substantiality, of resolvability, and yet they appear as all of this form. So form is emptiness, and the emptiness dances as form. They're inseparable. They're one and the same thing, which that makes no sense, like to in a sort of linear, rational kind of way. How can something that has no substance show up as substance? But it does. Just look. This is our actual experience. So all the things that we imagine ourselves to be, and we imagine the world to be, and then we imagine ourselves in a world that's of experiences and circumstances that we're somehow subject to, that can impact us in various ways, sometimes negatively, that we could be the victim of, that could overwhelm us, that we're trying to sort out, figure out, transform. All of our efforts to try to manipulate all these apparent objects so that we can feel better and feel more at peace, and on and on and on and on, sort of the human game that we play. An understandable one, but it's no wonder that we would become frustrated at some point with that whole process, because we can't quite grasp hold of the very things that we imagine are things that we're trying to fix. They can't be grasped hold of. So we're trying to manipulate like apparitions, basically. We're trying to control apparitions. We're trying to rearrange apparitions so that we can be okay, but there's not something there to grasp hold of. And one thing I wanted to add about this, the inability to pin down or define what's here experientially, which has profound implications for our lives, because we're basing so much of our lives and the way we navigate life and the way we try to find satisfaction and fulfillment in life arises out of the way we define things and the way we define different states and circumstances. But discovering that we can't ultimately define what's here is liberating, because we're liberated from that entire game structure. Because the one who's trying to find satisfaction and the things that that one imagines will bring satisfaction cannot be resolved. They can't be found. So where does that leave you? Well, it leaves you right here in your life. It leaves you right here. But there's not actually something to fix. There's not something that needs to be gotten rid of or repaired or transformed or made better. There's just this inconceivability, this infinity that shows up as all this stuff that we call life. But what it is in its basis is this indeterminate, infinite, fathomless luminosity, and brilliance. I talk a lot about this because it feels very central to me. But one of the principal reasons why it's not actually possible to pin down what this is, despite all the labels that suggest otherwise. Oh, I know what this is. I've got a word for it. um, is that the labeling is always one step behind reality. So there you were in that investigation that we just did briefly of exploring like what's actually here, right? And you may have noticed something quite striking about what's here is what's here isn't holding still, is it? It's not fixed. And so the effort to try to like pin it down, like I'm going to grab hold of it and there it is. I've got a handle on it, right? I've got a grip on it. I've got a way of encapsulating what it is and putting a boundary of definition around it. Like, okay, I've defined the parameters of what this is. I've now named it. I've described it. I've categorized it. I've characterized it. And it's like that whole process, which of course happens rather instantaneously, and with consciousness does this inexplicably. It's named all of this stuff in a sense, just like that. If we actually come back to actuality, not venture off into abstraction for a moment, just stay with what's right here, feel what's right here, and notice something remarkable about it, which is that it is gone no sooner than it appears. I mean, we've been here for 23 minutes on the call. Speaking of time, all that happened in that, what we would describe the past 23 minutes, where is it? It's not here anymore, right? So our experience is not what it was 23 minutes ago, let alone our perceptions are not the same as they were 23 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago or 1 minute ago or 1 nanosecond ago. Because whatever is here is then gone, just like that. So this is one of the most powerful ways to, I think, understand and get, in a visceral sense, in an actual sense, how the impossibility of definition. How do you define something that the moment you define it has changed into something else? How do you do it? You can't. Reality won't let itself be captured by the definitions that consciousness renders upon it, because its very nature is to be free of any effort to define it, because it's like, oh, you think you've caught me, now watch me become the next instant. So how can you define anything? You can't. So we live in this kind of strange paradoxical condition of seemingly contradictory condition of, well, it seems like things are sticking around long enough to experience them, right? Like, wow, that felt really good, or I feel like X, Y, or Z, or I'm experiencing X, Y, or Z, or I can hear this and I can understand his words and these words being spoken. So there's a sense of a kind of continuity to things. Like, it's not just like little flashes with no context. There's a sense of a flow that creates the sense of a kind of continuity of phenomena, for sure, which is what we call consensus reality. But experientially, we can also recognize just in a flash instant that there's no continuity experientially. Just feel that. Where's the continuity? It's complete discontinuity. Flashes. in a sense, there's not even anything taking form, because the apparent forming of the moment into something, it's like it's taking a form, and as it's assuming that form, it's leaving the trail of that form behind. So just like a something being sounded, the sounding of it is both the appearance of the sound and the disappearance of the sound, right? It's like a second hand on an old clock, right? So it's not, if you can recall those, the way they kind of seem to go like tick tick tick, like second by second. It's really actually it doesn't stop, right? It's continuously moving, and so the movement towards, like, let's say the number 12 on the clock, the second hand's moving, and does it ever arrive at 12 and stop and hang out at 12 for a while? No, does it? Is there an instant when it's frozen in time, so to speak? Or is it always moving towards 12 and departing from 12, like simultaneously? That's what I mean by the arising of this moment is the disappearance of this moment. The birth of this moment is the death of this moment. The arrival at the number 12 on the clock is the leaving the number 12 simultaneously. So in a sense, it never comes into form. The appearance, the apparition of life, never quite comes into form, and yet it sure looks like it does. It sure looks like it's formed. But if we really pay attention, if we're very, very precise with what's going on here, we can see that it is simultaneously appearing as formed, and we can see that the forms are vanishing nanosecond by nanosecond. Emptiness appearing as form, form is empty. That's what that means. And the forms are none other than the emptiness. So there's not two things, there's one thing. The waves of form are none other than the vast, empty, inconceivable ocean of existence. And that is true of each one of us. Whatever we think of as ourselves are none other than the vast ocean of emptiness, which is really almost more like the vast ocean of fullness, because it's full of everything.